Hi, it's Ohfor. Let's work on the special effects or the VFX for a new spell. so, um, while killing Gale might seem a very good idea for a funny little intro, it's not without consequences, as we can see here. Um, Let me just reload quickly. So today we'll be following up on what we did last time. So we made a frozen magic missile, and it still looks no. So we made a frozen missile, and it's based on magic missile, and it still looks and acts and whatever as magic missile itself. And this is what we're going to be doing something about today. However, let me just clean up this mess and then we can get going. Okay, so here we are. Just as a very quick recap, we have here Shadowheart, and she has access to our new spell, the Frozen Missile. She is currently level 1, I believe. Yep. And that is, for all intents and purposes, it's magic missiles, but with cold damage and one more charge. Okay, so we have a lot to cover here, and there's just no way I can cover everything that I would really want to in regards to spell effects. But let's get started anyway with some of the good stuff, and then we'll get there in the end. There's a few things going on when you cast a spell. Let's start with that. There's this state, which is the casting state. We'll see that Shadowheart raises her hand and gets ready to throw something. I'm going to leave Gale alone because that just doesn't end up so well. Let's spawn in a wolf. So stay out of this, Gale. And so we have the casting state, which is fantastic. And then when we cast it, so let's just get some spell going. Shadowheart goes through a movement where she throws her hand forward and then casts a spell. And there's a little bit more to it, but this we don't need a target for, so let's send them in this direction. You see there's, in this case, 4 projectiles that fly across the screen. And lastly, notice where they impact. There's an impact spell. Or effect, it's not a spell. And that in essence are all the components that we are going to have to mess with to change how our frozen missile acts and well, not behaves. The behavior we've already dealt with. I mean, you're free to modify it, adjust the damage, range, all those good stuff, and I mean, we can do that, but it's not really what we want to do here. And for this episode, there's 4 different effects in play here. So the casting, actually I think this is not the casting, this is the prepare phase. Then as soon as we fire, that's casting. And then additionally, the missiles fly across the screen and then they impact at the end. So 4 separate kind of things. And for this episode, I will be taking us through a tour of 2 of them, which would be the missiles in flight and the impact. And if there's time for it, then we'll also make it to the prepare and casting phase. I will say this, however, once we've done 1 or 2 of these, it becomes fairly obvious what we can do with this, or at least on a surface level, what we can do with this. And yeah, you should be able to have quite a bit of fun with that. So let's see what's involved in that. Alright, so it's time to leave game mode and go back and take a look at our spell. So we have it down here. It is a projectile frozen missile. Okay, so what actually affects this? So this was I'll not lie, this was a bit tricky. for me to figure out. Some of it is obvious enough, and some of it is not. Let's start with the obvious stuff. So I've talked about this a little bit before. There's some sound involved in casting the spell for various parts of it. So there's a sound when you're preparing, and then when you're holding it in the air, it's going to be playing the loop sound. And then when you cast it, there's a sound attached to that. So I won't be touching any of that. I'm simply not interested, at least not now. Then there's the animation itself. So one might be inclined to think that has something to do with how the spell looks, but it's not. In this case, it's Shadowheart's movement, or the character's movement. And messing with animations is really complicated stuff and far beyond my skills. You'd need to know external tools like Blender and whatnot, and configure bones, and I'm just not going to go there. Maybe for episode 52 of this series, I don't know, but it's definitely not going to be tonight. So let's move on. Here, however, now we're getting somewhere. We can see that there is a magic missile prepare effect, and there is a magic missile cast effect. So these are the two first, and actually, even though they're more obvious here, these are the ones I will not be touching today, because it's far less cool than what I actually have in mind, assuming it works. But if you're watching this video, it's a fair bet that it will work, otherwise I would have had to delay publishing it. However, okay, so prepare, cast. There's some stuff around the target. This I don't, there's so many different effects. We can take a look up here and see if it tells us anything, but it doesn't really. I don't know what these do yet. Let's just be very upfront about that. Beam effect. There are certain spells that send out a beam in game, so it's very likely related to that. Yeah. As always with modding, go take a look at something that closely resembles what you want to do, and then work from there. And that's it. So the first puzzle is really, where is the missiles itself and where's the target impact? Because it's not defined here, and that really had me puzzled for quite a while. So it's time to introduce you all to a new tool. So far, 95% of everything we've been doing is here in the stats editor, but as you can see up here, there's a whole heap of tools. Maybe you've been playing around with them, maybe not, but we are going to need some of them at this point. So what we need to do is, this is as good a starting point as any, we need to figure out what is magic missile prepare effect. So I'm going to copy that. And if you do searches, whatever, you're not going to find it here because it exists in a completely different space. We need something up here. Create and view resources. So we need the resource editor. So I'm going to click that. And it brings up this scary screen. Well, it's not so scary, but it is what it is. So here we see every single effect. So we have here, let's expand upon this a little bit. Some atmosphere resources, visual resources, sound resources, lots and lots of sound resources. So resources in this case, I mean, it's basically files. They're packaged up a little bit differently, but these are sound files. These are wave files or whatever. And what we need to find is our, I don't want to paste that much. I just want the base name, the prepare effect. Oh, so it's not here. Okay. So, and there's a reason for that, other than me being unprepared. Now, it's seriously, there's, so in the game, we have effects which are dealt with in the effect editor. We'll get to that in just a minute. Then there are multi-effects, so that's essentially a combination of individual effects. These we deal with in the multi-effect info editor. And let's call that up, because that's actually where we are going to find, not this, but this. So magic missile prepare effect. So we see here, it sits under spell data projectile, magic missile prepare effect. And so we can see there's two effects here. I can't possibly, because first of all, I don't know all of it, and second of all, there's a lot to go through here. I'm trying to take a sort of quick path through this without this being an 8-hour tutorial, so we can have some quick results and have some fun, because after all, having fun with mods is really key here. However, so we have two separate effects grouped together whenever Shadowheart goes into preparing casting magic missile, and for right now that's also what happens when she goes into casting our frozen missile, because the game sees them more or less the same way. And if we look here, then there's a visual resource that is prefixed with VFX spells prepare, and then there's a lot of flags and stuff down here. I think the only one you are likely to touch if you start doing your own effects from ground up right after this tutorial would be this one. This is essentially saying the effect is going to be tied to the bone of the right hand of the caster, and we can see that in game when Shadowheart prepares to cast, she raises her right hand. So that's what this is. And then the most important thing is the effect up here, and if I click that, we open up the effect editor called Allspark, and oh boy, there's a lot to unpack here, and we will definitely not be covering everything you can do in here right now, but we will get to much of it over time, because you can really do some cool stuff in here. But let's keep it simple for now, and to keep our sanity, I'm just going to close down. Actually, you can see here, so the UI of this tool is terrible. I can zoom in a little bit, but fortunately I can also in video editing zoom in a bit more so you can see it more clearly. But we can see here that Shadowheart goes into, or actually just the model, this is not necessarily Shadowheart, but the model goes into the casting animation and prepares to cast. So that's a VFX, that's an example of a VFX, and there's a lot to unpack here. All of this controlling the animation, the glow. You almost lose your breath just looking at this, because look at this, right? So I'll leave the details of how to make a VFX from ground up. That's as a whole separate video, or probably 2 or 3 videos at a later stage. If you feel adventurous, however, feel free to go in here after tonight's episode and play around. Just don't feel bad if it completely messes up for you and you end up in a very strange place, because I've certainly done that a couple of times. Okay, so enough of Allspark for now. But so what we have here is multi-effects that come into play, and I'm guessing it's because there's 2 things to it. There's one, so the way I understand this anyway, there's an effect that sort of deals with the whole raising of the hand and getting into position, and then there's one that actually gives the glow on the right hand and shows, you know, some red flashing as she prepares to cast it. So now that we have that, why don't we go back to our stats editor. See, there's also a cast effect. So we go back to the multi-effect info, and then sure enough, here we have the cast effect. So we have the hand effect here. As always, we can call it up, see what's going on. And let's take one more. Let's take this one here. I'm not going to read these out because, I mean, seriously. Okay, interesting. So we can see some things going on, and there's absolutely something with how the animations and the effect play together that I'm not fully clear on, which is why, even though this seems the obvious place to start, is actually not where I'm going to start today. I am going to go for the good stuff and actually see if we can succeed in manipulating the missile itself. So make it look, well, we're not going to make it look like ice, but we're certainly going to make it look more bluish. And then if that goes well, we'll do it again for the effect, for the splash, so that at least that looks blue. And that would be a good place to be. So where is this effect? This had me puzzled, truly, until I had a chat with a friendly modder on the Larian Discord, who pointed me in the right direction. So what controls the missiles in flight and the splash? Well, it has nothing to do with the cast effect and the prepare effect. It has to do with the trajectory. So projectile spells follow a trajectory. And so let's keep it simple. When you shoot an arrow, it goes in an arch to its target. And if there's anything in between you and the target, it's going to say path blocked, and it simply won't get there. And then magic missile is not like that. Magic missile can go around corners and can do all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's a different kind of trajectory. However, it turns out that the trajectory, that's a terrible word, I do apologize, controls the missiles in flight, which sort of makes sense when you think about it. And it also controls the impact because, again, when the trajectory ends, it spawns the splash. So what we need to find is that. And I have seen it several times, and you've probably heard I've just said ignore it, which is true, until it's no longer true. So we have here two GUIDs, and these are the trajectories attached to magic missile and therefore also frozen missile. So what are these? Right? Well, let's copy one of them. So I'll copy the first one, and then I did a few searches and couldn't find anything until I realized it is actually back here. VFX projectile spell magic missile 01 from the shared project. Okay, and just for good measure, let's copy out the other one and see what we find. We find another one which is also VFX projectile spell magic missile pathfind. So to very simply explain the difference between the two, one of them is in use whenever the missile is firing off in a straight line. At least this is my best understanding of it. So if I'm not completely accurate, please do forgive me. But when the missile is flying in a straight line, then it will use the first one we saw. And when it's bending around corners, it will use the pathfind one. And for magic missile, it doesn't actually matter. But imagine you had a spell that had a pointy tip, for instance. Then when it was doing bends around corners, you would want the tip to adjust to that. So it's kind of like a different trajectory algorithm. And I'm most certainly not going to go into the deeper details of how we do that. And unfortunately, we don't have to really know how that works. Just know that that's why there are two of them. And we are going to be working with both of them, even though they are mostly the same. So we're out here. This is where we always manipulate our root templates. And probably at some early point in probably episode 1 of this series, I would have mentioned that anything that does appear as an object in game, so when you have a backpack and you drop it on the ground, somewhere there needs to be a root template attached to it, even though we do most of the work in the stats editor. But it does need a root template to be able to appear in game. And these projectiles are game objects, just like so many other things. Sure, they're very explosive and whatever, but they're still game objects, and therefore the key to unlocking them is here. And just like any other template we find out here, we have the same options. We can create new from selected. We can create inherited from selected. We can do all kinds of stuff. We can even override it, which I never do. But it's possible. If you wanted to change the base behavior of Magic Missile, this is how you would do that. So yeah, let's get started by copying these two to our own mod. So let's go to that. For that, we're going to go back into the resource editor, and then we are going to find, so I'm going to take the trail effect, and with any luck, yep, sure enough, we can find it in here. You can see that's a Magic Missile in flight. Well, it's not technically in flight here. You're just going to have to sort of pretend that for your inner eye. And then we want our own copy. So I'm going to create new from selected. And then it brings up this fantastic little dialog. So resource package is our tutorial mod. The name. So I mean, it's not really force damage anymore, but I can't honestly believe that makes a difference. However, it is for tutorial frozen missile projectile 01. So let's call it that. And this can actually take a pretty long while. I've been warned. It's the first time I do this. So let's go up here, clear this field, click on tutorial mod. Sure enough, we have our own effect. Now we need the other one. So we go back here, and then we need the splash effect, and we're going to find that up here as well. We're not going to find it in our mod, so we can take all. Here we go, impact. So let's see out here. Yeah, so we see an impact animation out there. We know we have the right one. And again, we're going to create new from selected. And like before, this is for tut underscore frozen missile impact 01. And again, make sure the tutorial mod is selected. And when it clears here, I think it's done. So we clear the filters up here. Tutorial mod. Okay, so now we have these two effects in our own mod. All right, so far so good. That's essentially it. Now what we need to do, of course, is to point our root templates to our new effects. So the impact, I'm wondering if this takes a GUID or a name. We'll know in a second. So impact, copy name to clipboard. Okay, so it seems to have accepted my input. So now it's pointing to a frozen missile. And then we need the projectile itself, which will be right down here. Okay. And the beam, so there's a preview path. That's the line, the dotted line, you see. This one we're not touching. It's fine as is. Okay. So this is now done. And I think in the resource editor, there is a so we save that, we save our new template, and let's see if there's anything. No, there's not a lot we can do with this, to be honest. So we shouldn't see any changes, but at the very least it's good practice to just double check that in game things are still working. So here we have shadow hard. And it's not. Okay. So we can see that the target and the splash doesn't work. So there is something that needs to be done with these effects. And I was looking for it, but I didn't have much luck. So here we go. I think I know what it is, however. So if we double click this one and bring up, no, this is not the editor. This is just something else. So if we I was trying to avoid this, but so right click, open an editor. And this is our frozen missile impact. We are going to compile, so we can compile this effect. A little explainer here. These effects are something called particle systems. And particle systems are in turn systems that get converted to what is known as shaders, and they run on your GPU. This is the very, I do apologize, but this is the very simplified version of the explanation, but it's good enough for what we're doing here. And so that they need to be converted from this description format that Baldur's Gate has into something that a graphics card can understand. And for that, it needs to be compiled. Now we can compile this effect specifically, but we can also compile all of them for current module. I am going to do that and say yes to that. And with any luck, I'm not sure I believe in luck, but nevertheless, if we are lucky, nope, we're not. All right, so this is where I pause the video quick and just figure out what step is missing. I'll be right back. And as it turns out, we didn't actually do anything wrong. For once, it wasn't me messing up. This whole thing with effects and shaders and compilation, whatever, is, I think, finicky is a fair word to use, because all I did was basically shut down the tool, so basically exit the tool and load it up again, and then I spawned in. So this time it was Asterion who joined us, but I've spawned Shadowheart. And if we go in game and cast our missiles, here we go. They work fine. And just to double check that everything is as expected, we can see here that these are the new GUIDs that we pasted in. So we are pointing to our new templates. And if I look at the templates, they are pointing indeed to our frozen missile, and they show up in game. So we are happy. So I did actually configure the values for the Pathfinder version, but I don't actually think you are going to need to, and the reason for that being that it inherits straight from our base template here. So as you can see, I pasted the values in here, but it's marked as local value, which means that if there's no value, it would pick it up from the parent. However, I can't find a way to clear this field, reset, so that it doesn't. Oh. There we go. Learning a little bit of on-the-job training here. So reset these values. You'll see they don't change, but now, because they're not marked as local, they will just basically pick up. So if we make a change here, it will automatically reflect down here. So let me just save that quickly. Okay, so now we have everything set up. We have our own VFX, we have our own templates, we have our own trajectories. I do apologize. My tongue simply can't find its way around that word. And all we need to do now is the good stuff. Now we've done all the setup. I know this video is getting on the longer side. I do apologize, but these are, I mean, between my fumbling and a very complicated subject matter, it does take some time. I really want to try and make each step on this journey clear, even make a few mistakes, because as I correct them, hopefully you also learn something from that. So we're going to go, once again, a little bit over 30 minutes. However, now we're ready for the good stuff. So why don't we do that? So there's a couple of ways we can get to what we need. One of them being directly via the effects editor, the Allspark. But I'll show you why I try and avoid this as much as possible. First of all, what is this, right? So there's two things in here. Now, there's a little bit of understanding of Larian Studios needed. Some of this tooling came from Divinity Original Sin 2, and which was sort of in some ways similar to Baldur's Gate, which is why the tooling has been reused. But there's also some things that are different. One of them being that, at least to my knowledge, components and modules simply do not make sense in context of Baldur's Gate, so we can get rid of those. We still have some obvious problems, like this search field, which is half cut off. And so I do believe, because I'm running 4K resolution with some font scaling, I do believe that this is part of the problem I'm having here. Not that I mean, let's be honest, I don't really see that as a valid excuse in 2024. But never mind. I also really dislike how, so I can type in, for instance, missile down here, and then I can find the original magic missile effects. And of course, if I go down to our own mod, here are the two new ones we've created. So we can go this way. If I double click this, I am brought into the editor, and we can see the projectile. This is the impact, and then the projectile itself. So it works, but I must say I much prefer going in via the resource editor. So here we have the tutorial mod 1, and then we have impact and projectile. So we get a little, I guess we can do like that. So we get a little bit of a preview out here. That's cool. And there's a few things we can mess with here, but in reality, what I then do is I open an editor here. So we still end up in this questionable UI. However, I find it a little bit easier than navigating through search here, etc., etc. You do what you want. We end up in the same space. Okay, so what can we do with the projectile? So let's make sure we have the projectile open, because that's going to give us the most immediate result. I'm going to make the Allspark a little bit bigger, so we have slight chance of figuring out what's going on. So as I briefly mentioned, what we're dealing with here are particle systems, and particle systems is essentially a way for graphics cards to spawn particles, and apply effects to them. There's simply no way I can cover all the details of that, but we fortunately don't need to. Let's take a look at what we have. So if we click these boxes up here, we get various parameters for the particle effect that has been attached to it. So they can be grouped and organized in various ways. But if we go back to what I said at the beginning, what we're really looking to do here is, well, let's keep it simple and make a blue magic missile, and thereby signify that this is cold damage. And fortunately, to do that, we don't actually need to know everything that's going on in here. We just need to know some of it. So as we can see here, for this effect, it has some parameters here and something to do with rotation, etc. And that's basically it. So nothing here that has anything to do with the coloring of the particles. So we move on. Same story here, light. Oh, so here we go. We see here that there is a color element and it's red. So this is what we want to change. We want pretty much, I mean, I'll simplify it a bit, but everything that's red, we're going to make blue. So to understand what we're looking at here, we can at any time just press play up here, and then we can see the article sort of pulsating here. And if I click this color here and make that, so we need sort of a light blue to sort of match up with the red intensity. Let's go with that. It doesn't have to be that accurate. So now we've changed. We see the gradient now goes from light blue to red, but when we click at the other end, we now have something blue. Now it's not so obvious yet over here that we've made a change, but there's already some change done. Okay, so far so good. Let's save our progress. I'm a little bit paranoid with this tool. And that's it. So now we've changed the lighting to a bluish color. Let's see what else we have. Invisible clouds. Again, like a bleeding idiot, I'm just scrolling through it, see if there's anything that has anything to do with the color red, and then change that. And sure enough, there's definitely something red going on here. And so I'm just going to, so it's about this intensity. I'm going to go blue. Again, this is not an exact science, but if I see something red, I will make it blue. Simple, yeah? So now we're going over 3 gradients of blue. I have no idea where exactly they fit in the particle system because I didn't create it and I haven't spent enough time with it, but I just don't care. So that was invisible clouds. Let's see core streaks. Oh, lots of red here. Okay, so we're going from a dark blue into another shade of blue. If there's I mean, to the graphics designers and whoever might be watching out there, I do apologize. Because I am literally just messing about. I just need it to be blue. Okay, so that was core streaks. Then the lens flare. Oh, lots of blue here. It goes from black to red, back to black. So we just need to change the center color. I don't know if you can see it, if it's clear enough in the YouTube algorithm, but it's turning more and more blue over here. So we're on the right track. Okay. Additive caustics. I don't even know what that means. But it's red. So we'll make it blue. Blue here. Blue here. Oh, you look at that. Now, see? It's getting more blue over here. We're getting somewhere. Then we have background dark. Goes from some kind of blue here to another kind of blue here over white, where we leave the white. See, we're almost there now. It's actually kind of cool. You can just real-time edit this. Oh, so here's definitely a lot of red that we need to deal with. So, and then it goes down into black, white kind of thing. That's fine. All right. Then sound. I am going to guess that there's nothing but colors in there. And then medium frequency. Okay. So now there's still a little bit of red in here that I'm not fully aware of where it's coming from, so we'll just make another quick pass. Just to see if we overlook something that had to do with the color red. There we go. There's a little bit of red here. Set that to blue. Okay, So now we have a blue frozen missile, or magic missile, but we're using frozen missile. So let's save that, and then compile that, and then let's go back in game and see if we have a glorious success, or I need to do more restarting. Look at that. So we have blue missiles now. Okay, so that's cool. I mean, I'd call that a result. So we go back to the resource editor, and now we need to do the same for the impact. And for this, I will fast forward the video because it's going to be exactly the same. I'm going to go through all of these and set up or change all red colors to blue colors. So hang on. Okay, so we now have an impact that is mostly blue. Maybe it's my eyes, but I sense a little bit of red in there. I feel like I went through them 2 times and still it missed some. So I don't know the special care that needs to be taken, or it needs to be saved often or whatever. But it's blue enough for purposes of this. And you didn't have to sit through all of that because I skipped through it quickly. Now what we need to do is, of course, compile all VFX for module, and then let's see it in game, hopefully. So we go back here, enter game mode, go Shadowheart, and there we go. So yeah, there's definitely still some red in there, but I mean, the principle I followed should be clear. Just walk through these effects like an elephant in a glass house and change everything that's red to blue or whatever. We're just modding the effect. We're not creating a new effect from ground up, and I think it serves its purpose for now. Now, of course, what needs to be done is the prepare effect, because she's holding a red magic missile here, and that's definitely no good. And that's also what she's casting, and then it turns blue in flight. So we still need to do the last 2 effects, but I don't think it's really necessary for this video, because it's going to be almost the exact same principle. We're going to find the VFX for it, and we'll go through it. So I'll either do that offline or not do it at all, or if it becomes relevant, we'll cover it in an upcoming video. I just wanted to show the basic principle of how does the visuals of a spell come to be, and how can we do something with that. And I think we've achieved that. I'm pretty happy with this result, and we can probably do a few more as we move on. But we can also go like proper hardcore and really try and create our own spell effect. But for that, we would need to invent a whole new spell for it to make sense, because what we're doing here is essentially the same. So I think for the next episode, maybe we cover that the splash effect actually leaves some ice on the ground, if I can get that working the way I intend. And so we sort of combine ray of frost. When it hits, it leaves ice on the ground, or it can leave ice on the ground. Can't recall if it does it all the time. So if we could do that, then we have something truly unique. For right now, however, I'd say this has gone on long enough, and let's just leave it here, and then I'll see you all next time. Have fun.